last video, I had decided to leave Houston, Texas. But prior to me leaving Houston, Texas, he had came out with some merchandise for people to buy, merchandise with his brand that he was establishing. And I said before, I was a huge supporter. I supported everything he did, his lectures, his teachings. And when he came out with his merchandise, I wanted to buy all of it. So I started to purchase a lot of his stuff that he was coming out with. So I did. And he had called me one day after I had purchased some things, and he said, Tiffany, I see you purchased, some things. Thank you very much, but there's something I gotta tell you. And I'm like, what? And then he's saying that, he just got thrown out of the house. And that, his children's mother had saw that I had purchased some merchandise, and that she was mad about it and threw him out the house. And he was walking New York with nowhere to go. And he's telling me, with no fault of your own, it's not your fault or anything. I'm like, okay, I know it's not my fault, but why would she throw you out the house if y'all are not together? Why is she getting mad that I'm purchasing merchandise? And he just kept saying, that's just how she is, it's how she is, but, now he has nowhere to go. He's outside with his stuff, and he has nowhere to go. So I am, kind of perplexed at this moment, and I'm telling him sorry. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. Like, I don't want you outside with nowhere to go. He ends up, staying with one of his friends. It was just very weird to me. Of course, me already knowing what the deal is, I confront him again with it. And his excuse was, she's just, she knows, like, he told her about me or something like that. He told her about me. I don't know the actual thing, of course, of what he told her or what's going on. He was just saying that, she knows about me, and that she just doesn't like me. That, he was just saying, that she just does, is jealous of the relationship or something like that. But I'm like, okay, but you just said to me that, y'all are not together, and that he even went as far as telling me that, she was with someone else, that she had a relationship with someone else, and that it was just an understanding that, he would do his thing, she does her thing. So it was just very confusing for me. But of course, I'm believing and giving him the benefit of the doubt and believing what he's telling me. So I'm like, okay, whatever, as long as you're good now, you're not on the street. He was like, he's not on the street. So I tell him, I said, I had plans to move. What would he think if I moved to New York and established myself there? That way, would it be easier? So for us, I try and, I tell him I'm going to, find a job, make some money, and then, would it be easier for us to be together if I'm in New York? And then I can bring my children, and then we can, I had all these plans, and I'm telling him, we can, get a house, we can move in, and we can get the kid. And he's like, yes, that would be much easier, if I was willing to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to do that. So that's what I did. I got my stuff together, it was the biggest decision that I've ever made, because I've never lived anywhere else but Texas. I've never lived anywhere without my children, and I knew I had to establish myself first before I brought them with me, because I didn't have a place I was going to stay. I was going to stay with family and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big decision for me. I finally said that's what I was going to do. I went and told my ex-husband. I wanted his support for me. I wanted to see what he thought. I told him, he didn't know about this relationship. He knew about this guy that I was talking to, but he didn't know how deep I was in with this man that I was talking to. He didn't know about this connection. He didn't know how deep this really was. I went and told him, I wanted to move to New York. I needed to find a better job. I needed to find a way to make more money. And I wanted to leave Texas. And he's known that I've always wanted to leave Texas. Even when we were married, I told him I was trying to get him to move with me to other places in the world, and not even just the States, out of the, in the entire world. I wanted to move, and he never wanted to. So when I came and told him that I wanted to move to New York, he wasn't really surprised. He just was, he literally gave me his blessing. He said, Tiffany, I always thought I kind of held you back. I know you always wanted to move. If this is what you want to do, don't worry about it. I have the girls. I got the girls. You don't have to worry about that. I'll take good care of them. And I'm like, that made me feel better, but it also tore me to pieces. I'm like, I just wanted my girls to be okay without me there. But he told me, if this is what you have to do, then do it. And so I did, and those goodbyes to my... When I said goodbye to my daughters, I told them, I said, Mommy is going to move to New York, but I'm coming back for them. But I was leaving because I needed to make more money, and I needed a better life for myself and for them. They hugged me and they said, Mommy's going to go make more money. And I'm like, yes, and I'll be back, I promise. And I said, I'm going to come back every month to visit you. And then I will bring you to New York and we can live together. And they said, okay. That was the hardest thing that I have ever done then. So by February of 2018, that was my flight to New York. I had everything planned. I thought I did. I contacted, because my family's from New York, so I had contacted family members because my plan was to stay with family for a certain amount of time until I got myself established where I can get out on my own. And, these family members had told me yes at first. And then, the plans kind of fell through with family, and very, very last minute, with several family members. And I found myself without a place to stay the day before I had to fly out to New York. And I quickly searched online, which is crazy to do, and I don't recommend it to a lot of people if you're new to New York and just trying to move out there. make sure, the place that you're going to is, on the up and up before you leave, But I went online. I tried to search for, a place to rent. And I found a room. It was a room for rent monthly, like $700 a month for a room in somebody's home. And so I had contacted her because it was a woman, and I told her I needed a place and I was coming the next day, and I my plans had fell through and I needed something very quickly. She agreed. She said the room was still available, and the listing online has said it was like Queens, and so I had planned to move, to Queens with this woman renting a room for $700 a month. I get my stuff. I get to the airport. I literally was going to New York with only, I don't know, like $4,500 on me. Literally only $4,500 on me. That's all I had to take to New York. I get on the plane. I land in New York, and I contact the lady and tell her I'm in New York, I'm here, and I first say, hey, this is Tiffany, I'm here, blah blah blah. She messages me back and says, oh my gosh, I was about to cancel on you because I didn't know who you were because you didn't put your name, and I thought you were a guy, and I have a daughter, and she lives here with me, and I was thinking it was going to be a guy that I didn't know. And she was ecstatic that I was a woman. So I was like, yes, I'm a woman. And so she was just telling me how brave I was just answering some online ad coming to New York and not knowing who the person was. I'm like, hey, I was prepared either way of how this was going to go. So when I got here, so the place ended up not being in Queens. That was just a listing online, but the place ended up being in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, like near 104th and Amsterdam area. And so I get there, and I meet her and I meet her daughter, and I move in to the room that she had available in her apartment. And I get myself together there, My plan was to go search for a job the next day. And I get there in February of 2018. It's freaking blizzard. It's snowing. I'm not used to that weather, but, I get there and it's cold as I don't know what, and it's snowing. And I message, the guy I'm talking to, and I tell him I'm here. And he's excited, and he says, where are you? Where are you? Did you get a place? Blah, blah, blah. And, I tell him all the plans fell through. I'm renting a room from somebody on the Upper West Side, but I'm here nonetheless, And it's not going to take me long to find a job, find a place on my own, and then we can start, my plan, of course, was to get a place for my girls and for him and his children. That was the plan. And so, I tell him this, and he's like, no, that's no rush, no biggie, no, as long as you're here and you're safe. And, it was good until, I started looking for a job. It didn't take me long to land a job. I landed a job very quickly. And, I was kind of upset about, or disappointed about, the pay that they gave me, because, I left Houston making like $48 a year, and I came to New York, and this job that I decided to go with, because I actually had multiple job opportunities when I got there. I had several land in my lap. And then there was one that really landed in my lap, and I didn't even apply for the job. some recruiter called me and told me that they were looking for, they found my resume online, and that, I had the perfect, credentials of what they were looking for. And did I want to come in for an interview? And so, I gave them a try. At first I was going to say no, because I had some other jobs that I was going to go ahead and take, but I decided to go ahead and just do the interview anyway. So I went in, did the interview, and, they hired me, a couple days later. And it wasn't what I was wanting in pay because, of course, anybody knows New York, in order for you to live in a decent place, in a decent area, you have to at least be making at least $70,000 a year and up to live somewhere decent. So when I got this job that had only started me at 55, but with overtime, I was pulling in 70 because I worked my butt off. So I was making 70, but the salary base is not what I wanted. So when I got this job, things started to be a little bit weird. The communication with me and this guy was sporadic. It was not how it was when I was in Houston. So when I got to New York, he would tell me all this stuff like, he's happy I was there. Now that I'm in New York, he was going to take care of me. Anything that I wanted, let him know because he was going to take care of me, all this stuff. But then, I would ask him these questions like, okay, when I'm going to see you, or, when are we going to go out? When are we going to, when I'm going to see you? And it was, oh, I'm going to see you, on this day. And then that day would come and then I wouldn't see him. So it was a lot of that. I would get upset and mad about it. But then, he would just say, he's going through a lot. He's busy. He's doing a lot of things. The kids, busy with the kids, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. I just threw myself into work. I literally would work around the clock. The job that I had required a lot of time to be spent there, and I did. So I would go in 7:30 a.m., 8 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and would work overtime till after midnight. I would work all day long. But it was, bringing in the money that I wanted. But it would take my mind off of him because he wasn't always there. And every time I would ask, these questions of what's going on? Are you sure you're not with her? Are you with her? And he would just adamantly tell me no. All the time. No, stop asking me these questions. That was all of 2018. And we would, go back and forth. He would see me when he saw me. ...2019 rolls around. So I gave myself a goal before I get to that. I gave myself a year of being in this house that I was in with this woman, renting this room. I was like, within the year, I'm going to find... I save up all my money. I'm going to find a place of my own. And, this way, and me and the guy that I'm talking to can move on, move on, move in together, or blah, 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 whatever it's going to be. So after that year is up, I ended up getting a promotion, a raise, and it took me up to I don't know, I think it was 69 or 70 a year. And it was a big raise. Plus I was still getting overtime. So I was making about 90 a year with the overtime. So after that year was up, I found my own place in Brooklyn. And so I was happy about it because I didn't have to roommate. I had my own place. And it was a nice place. It was small, but it was just me at the time. And also prior to this, before I get into 2019, when I was there in 2018, I was always flying back to Houston. So like every other month I was going back to see my girls because I just couldn't take it. And there was times where I just was like, I cannot take this being apart from my daughters. I had to go move back to Houston. My ex-husband actually was talked to me kind of out of it. He was just like, the feelings that you're feeling is normal, the separation anxiety. He was like, it's normal. You're not going to give yourself time to, get yourself established there, Tiffany. I would call him being like, I don't know if I can do this. I can't be away from my daughters. I can't. The FaceTiming, I just want to squeeze them. I want to come back. And he's like, you're flying back, every other month or, every 2 months, just, he would tell me if I felt like I needed to move back, then move back. But he really just thought I needed to give myself time. So I listened, but plenty of 2018, I wanted to go back. So by the time I got my own place in 2019, I was ecstatic. I was happy. I can bring the girls. They can stay with me and come visit me, which they did. When I got my place in 2019, the guy I was talking to helped me move in. He came and got all of my stuff from, this woman's apartment that I was in and helped me move into the place in Brooklyn where I got established. So I asked him, I said, are you going to move in? And he said, yes, I'm going to move in. Just give me time to talk to my children, all this stuff. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do. Sit down and talk to your children. Help them understand what's going on. Several months go by and still kind of nothing. And then I was on a walk one day. And then I happened to look at social media and I get this message from this woman. And I wasn't friends with her, so I went into my other inbox where you can't really see those messages until you click in it. So I clicked into that message, and lo and behold, it's his children's mother. And she's coming at me like saying things like you always have your door open for somebody who's taken, who's with someone already, all this stuff, talking about me and being a bad mother and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute, where is all this coming from? And so all I did was, respond back and give her my phone number, like, call me. Like, I don't even know what's going on at this point. So I didn't want to tell the guy that I was speaking to that I got this message until after I had talked to her, because I didn't want to give him any opportunities to do what he needed to do in order to get out of what he thought he was going to get out of. So she ended up calling me and we talked. She didn't know. I didn't know. Of course, I'm going off what he's telling me. So I didn't know that they were, she's telling me that they're together. They were always together. And I'm telling her, well, we've been together for, at the time, I'm talking to her 5.5 years. I'm telling her we've been together for like 5 years. What are you talking about? I moved to New York, for a better job and for him. He knows this. I start telling her the story of how we met, what he's been telling me. And she gets upset and she's telling me that I can have him. you could have him. I'm putting him out, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, it's kind of embarrassing to say, prior to all of this, I had always given him money. And it was when he really needed it, whether it be for, you know, bills or whatever he said he needed it for. I always gave it to him. And he never wanted to ask me for money. That he made perfectly clear when the thought of me handing over money to him first happened in the first place, because this was happening when I was in Houston. I would give him money. So when I got out to New York, I was still giving him money, and that was part of the conversation that I had with her on the phone. And she would just laugh about it and say, well, you know, thank you. He used that money on me and the kids. We went to so-and-so. And so I was like, okay. Because even prior to this, when he needed money for his kids' birthdays and stuff like that, I would give it to him. For venues that he needed to rent out was what he would tell me. I would give it to him. For birthday presents for the children, I would give him money for the birthday presents for his children. That's embarrassing to say, but I did, because I had it, and you know, I didn't want him to be without, and I didn't want his children to be without. If my children are not without, my children always made sure they always had. So I was going about it to where, like, this was my future. You know, I wanted him to be my future, and these children might be my future, and I wanted his children to have exactly what, you know, my children is going to have. So I never wanted him or his children to be without for anything. So I always made sure I always had it to give if he needed it. So when she came at me and said that, I was just like, wow, you know, that's what you're using. That's what you're using my money for. So when we had this long conversation on the phone, I'm telling her how we met, how this all happened, and what he was saying about her, you know, because what he had to say about her was nothing good ever when he would talk to me about her. It was always, she never supported him. She doesn't care about nothing that he does. She's this and she's that, which I don't want to say online because it's, you know, it's not nice to say. And even with her coming at me the way she did, I would never want to, in this type of situation, because of my love for him, I would never want to make anyone look bad. So he would say some pretty nasty things about her. And when we got off that phone conversation, I screenshot the message that she sent to me and sent it to him and said, this is what she's messaging me. He just said, why did I talk to her? He asked, why did I talk to her? I said, she messaged me and I gave her my phone number. So as he's messaging me, she's calling me back. And as I pick up the phone, they're arguing, you know, I hear him in the background, I hear her, and she's arguing with him, telling him to get all his shit and to get out. And she's saying that he's coming to you, Tiffany. You could have him. He's coming to you. And as she's saying all this stuff, she's, you know, spewing all this nasty stuff at him, telling him, you know, she hopes he dies, hopes he gets hit by, you know, a car, or hopes he chokes on something and dies. In my mind, I'm like, I'm upset, I'm pissed off, at him, and I don't know what to do. I was confused, and I just did not know what to do. As I hang up the phone with her, he brings all of his stuff to my house. He comes in and he brings all his stuff in, and we're kind of quiet. We don't really say anything until finally he starts to speak. And I'm like, what's going on? She's telling me y'all are together. And he's steady telling me that they're not together, that she's just jealous that he wants to move on with me. And if it was anybody else, she'd be okay with it. But it's me that she doesn't like. And I'm like, well, why doesn't she like, what did I do? Why didn't she like me? He's just giving me the runaround and literally telling me that they are not together. He hasn't touched her. He doesn't want to be with her. So I said, okay, well, if this is true, then, I mean, you're here. So, I'm thinking, okay, you're here. Let's figure this out. Like, let's figure this out. Let's not be in the situation that we're in and figure this out. The next day, he wakes up and he's telling me that he has to go back because he can't be without his children. So I'm like, what do you mean go back? And he's telling me he just can't be without his children. He can't wake up every day without his children. And I'm upset, but I'm like, what am I gonna do? Hold you here? Like, I can't make you stay where you don't want to be. And I've always felt that. And he keeps saying it's not that he doesn't want to be here. And I'm like, I feel that you don't want to be here. Like, I feel it from him. He's denying it, and he keeps saying it's not that. It's not that. So he leaves and he goes back. You would think that any other woman would be like, done, 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 done. When he did that, several days go by, because this is what he does. When he does stuff like this, even when I bought the plane ticket and he didn't come, when he does stuff to disappoint me or him too, what he does is he runs and he hides and he doesn't say anything. So it took him a couple days before he messaged me again and said, he's sorry. He understands if it feels like I have to move on. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I moved from Texas to New York to establish something here with you, with our family. Like, what are you talking about at this point? Are you with her? Do you want to be with her? Or do you want to be with me? His response was always, I want to be with you. I just don't know how to leave my children. I want to be with you, Tiffany, and you have to understand this is a complex situation, is what he would always say. It's a complex situation. So I would be like, I'm trying to be there for you because I wanted to be there for him. I loved him. Like I wanted to be there for him. So I'm trying with every bit and part of me to show him I'm here for you. I'm loyal to you. I love you. What do you need me to do for you? Like, what can I do to help you? Time goes by and she kicks him out again and he comes back to my house. This was happening all of 2019. All of 2019, it was being kicked out of the house and coming to my house, stay for several days and go back. A couple months later, do the same thing. And I was my emotions were everywhere. I didn't know what to believe anymore because he kept telling me he's not with her, but she was telling me that they were, and that I knew in my heart that something was not right. And I was stuck in the middle, being confused and being pulled each and every which way mentally because of what he was telling me. Don't listen to her. She's lying. Whatever she's telling you, ignore her text messages, ignore her Facebook, her social media, because she's at this point she's posting about me, like she's subbing me all over social media, and I'm confronting him saying, why is she saying this if you're telling me that y'all are not together? And he's saying, don't listen to her, stop watching social media. She's just trying to tear us apart. She doesn't want us, she doesn't want me to love you, and she's just trying to do all this stuff, and she's this bad person that's trying to just tear us apart. And I'm thinking in my head, this is insanity. Like, this is insane that I would believe this. But if I'm talking about this because there's women that are going through this right now. To be in love with someone and go against your better judgment, and to be attacked. To be attacked by other people, and to bring this stuff to the person you love, to tell this person you love you're being hurt emotionally, and you're suffering from anxiety, because that's what I suffered from. To be mentally torn apart. To want to believe yourself, but you just can't, because you're trying to show this person that you love, that you trust them, and you believe them, and you don't want to be disloyal. I was in and out of the hospital with anxiety attacks, stress, and I would tell him this, and all he could say was that he was sorry and that he loved me, and that I was the only person that ever believed in him, and the only person who understands him, the only person who truly knows him, which is probably true, but it was killing me. It was to keep this from everybody, because I held this for everybody, all of my friends in New York. I told one person, and that one person knows what I was going through. And she was there for me when I was going through all of this, but to not tell anybody what I was going through killed me. I struggled emotionally with what to do, because my heart knew the truth. My mind, I knew the truth, but my heart was just like, I love him, but I dislike him. The person that he is right now, and the energy that he's in, the lies, I mean, like, why lie to me? All of 2019 was like this. And then 2020 rolls around. And it's still the same thing, but the pandemic hits, and now we have COVID. She had kicked him out again, and he had came to my house the beginning of 2020. He stayed a couple days again. Each and every single time he came, he always said that he was staying. Each and every single time he said he promised me he was staying. He was never leaving. He wasn't going to leave again. And he would leave every single time. In 2020, it happened again, and he would just, he went back. And then when COVID hit, he said, he couldn't, of course, be without his children again during this time. And I was flying still back and forth to see my children in Texas, even during the pandemic. At this point, I was kind of fed up, and I didn't know what else to do. And I thought maybe if I just moved back to Texas, everything would be okay. I was so upset. I called movers and was gonna pack everything up and move back to Texas. I told my ex-husband I was coming back. And that things just in New York just wasn't gonna work. I get to Texas, and I tell the guy that I was seeing in New York that I'm leaving. Like I can no longer, I'm not gonna be in New York anymore. He gets upset, of course, and he tells me not to leave, to come back, and that he was going to finally, truly be with me and move in, all this kind of stuff. Don't move back, come back home to New York. So I ended up staying in New York again. So I go back to New York. He said that he was going to have plans to move back in with me. And by this time, it's like the end of 2020 at this point. He was going to move back in with me. He was going to move back in with me for real. But he wanted to wait he told me he wanted to wait after his children's birthdays, because, his children's birthdays are a month apart. And that was February and March. So he was going to be moving in with me March of 2021. That was the date of him going to officially move in with me. And he wanted to wait after his son's birthday in March. So I agreed. I said, okay, fine. If that's what you say, I'm going to try and believe it, okay. But if it doesn't happen, for me in my mind, I was like, I can't keep doing this. February of 2021. He comes by my apartment. We go out, we hang out together, we're together. And, I posted some things online. At this point, I think that his children's mother was, watching my page and on social media. And so she would see what I posted. I posted something saying, prior to this though, before I get to this, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. Before I get to this, my children flew out to New York over the Thanksgiving break. in 2020. And either it was 2019, I can't remember if it was 2019. They flew in one of those years. And when my 2 younger girls came to New York to spend their break with me, he actually wanted to meet them, and I wanted him to meet them as well. I know, but he actually came to my house while they were there, and they met him. We went out to eat, and we actually spent that day in Brooklyn, and we walked the Brooklyn Bridge together. And he took photos and stuff, and he was really good with the kids. He was making jokes, and they were having fun. And then that day, he thanked me for letting him meet my children and stuff. And so he had left. So I say that to say that he did meet my children, and he even has stated, now he knows where I stood. Like, he knows that I wanted a future with him, and I'm like, you didn't know that prior to that? But that was his thing of saying, he knew that I saw him as future. So fast forward again, in February 2021, I had posted something online, and it was pertaining to him. And she saw what I posted online and got upset about it and kicked him out of the house. He had messaged me a picture of all his stuff outside their apartment, and basically showing me that she had kicked him out. At this point, I was like, what's new? I didn't know how else to feel, because it always happened. So I, being kind of rude about it, I said, well, just lie your way out of this way and go back in, because I'm not the place where you want to be. And it just kind of came out that way, and because I was kind of fed up with the situation, because I knew that's what he always did. He got upset that I messaged him that, and said, he'd figure it out. Why would I say something like that? And it was me just really being in my feelings and being like, you're just going to come here and you're going to leave again. Like, I know that's what you're going to do. So why waste your time lugging everything to my house when you can just lie your way back in? Like, I know that's effed up, but, it's what I was thinking at the time. So we argue, we go back and forth. He ends up coming over to my house. He brings all his stuff. And he was upset because he was saying that, his daughter's birthdays were that month in February. And they had this big thing planned for their Sweet 16. And so I kept saying, okay, you can still go to their Sweet 16. And he kept telling me, no, I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm like, well, what don't I understand? What don't I understand? Why can't you still go to their Sweet 16? He just kept going, she's not going to let me go. She's not going to. And I'm like, what do you mean? What's going on? What's happening on their Sweet 16? Why can't you go and celebrate your daughter's birthday? He just kept saying, I wouldn't understand. I don't understand. I'm like, okay. So he was pretty upset about it, and that night, he was like, we had this conversation, and he was like purchasing things to be delivered to my house, just a whole setup of things that he had going on, that he had to set up at the place where he was. He was going to have it set up at the place, my house. So he was ordering all this stuff online and stuff, and so I was just like, okay, well maybe he does plan on actually kind of staying. I don't know. So the next day, he said he had to go get the rest of his stuff. He leaves. And then, several hours later, he comes back and he tells me, Tiffany, I'm leaving. He always told me that's something that he always did, so this was nothing new when he did this, but this time was a little weird because I felt something totally different from him this time. This last time he did it. So when he said he had to leave, I told him, no, you're not leaving. And he said that he had to leave and that he was getting all the stuff and he already had called a car to take him back home. I said, you're not going to leave me. And then he says, I'm leaving you. And I had, I grabbed him. When I grabbed him, he said, get off of me or he'll call the police. But when he looked at me, it was anger. It was something I have never experienced from him. And it was a total different vibe. And I knew then that it was different. Like it was different. So I knew. And as he was taking all of his stuff outside, I had this feeling of like, this is it. And when he was taking all of his stuff, he didn't say bye. He just left and he swung the door closed. I didn't even know what to think or feel. I just know that from 2015 to 2021, I had always been there for him. No matter what. Whether he's being kicked out of the house, whether he had nowhere to live, nowhere to go, walking the street. I never wanted to see him in a bad place or a bad situation. I was always there for him, no matter what. And I mean in any type of way, whether it be financially, emotionally, any type of way I had his back, no matter what. No matter, even if I knew the truth, and I still didn't want him in that place. Because even though he was that type of person to be treating women the way he treated them, me, her, other women, I saw him. I saw past all of that because he let me see past all of that. And I saw who he wanted to be and who he could be. And I love that man. So when he left, for the last time, it broke me because the sweet 16 that he had planned with his children's mother was a trip to Miami, which he didn't tell me about, which is why he said I wouldn't understand. They had this family vacation in Miami, And he was posting it all online. Like they were just this happy. And it made me angry, and it made me sad. And he would always go several days and then call me and tell me he's sorry. And this time there was no phone call. When all this was happening, my ex-husband was seeing somebody new. And he was deciding to have this woman move in with him and her 2 boys with my 2 girls in the house. I didn't feel comfortable with another woman I didn't know. I never spoke to. I didn't know her, and I didn't know her children, and she had 2 older boys, and I didn't want them around my girls because I didn't know who these people were. So when I was going through all of this was happening. And I told my ex-husband, I don't want my girls being around her boys. And he told me he understood. I said, I'm going to bring my girls to New York with me. They were going to move. And at this time, it was the pandemic going on. They were doing online school, so I figured it was all going to work out anyway. They were doing their schoolwork online. They can finish the schoolwork online in Houston, here in New York, and then I can just transfer schools. That was the plan. And he told me, wait till they finish the school year out, and then you can do that. And I said, okay, But when all this hit, I was like, I don't know what to do. I was emotionally just a mess. I didn't know where I hate to even think about myself in that space, that energy, because it was the darkest space that I had ever been in, emotionally and mentally. I had never been in that space before in a relationship, and I didn't know how to deal with it at all. March rolls around. And I still haven't heard from him. But, he's posting online like everything's good and everything's fine. And everything's so funny. All of a sudden, he posts online that he proposed or they were getting married. Me seeing that online. It felt like somebody reached inside of my heart, my chest, and pulled my heart out. It was the worst feeling I had ever felt in my life. And I was going through this by myself, and I didn't let anybody know. I was embarrassed. I was shattered in like a trillion pieces. And I was just like, how is this happening to me? How is this happening to me? everything that I had gone through with him, everything that we had talked about. I moved from a different state. Everything that I did, which was wrong with me, but everything that I did, I tried to center, or not center, but like everything I did was with him in mind. The job, the home. It was for me to get better, do better, and for him. I had always wanted to make it right and to make him better. And it was just like, it was all for nothing. I tried to prove my love. I tried to prove my loyalty. I tried to prove who I was for him, because I knew he struggled with trust and intimacy and all of that. And I tried so hard to prove myself. And then for what? I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed to tell anyone. The only person I told was one of my co-workers I became really, really good friends with. She was from Texas. And she moved to New York like I did. And she didn't know anything until I told her everything. And I didn't have anybody else to tell that I felt comfortable telling. And she just couldn't believe it either. This was the worst feeling in the world. To have someone you love do this to you. To betray you like this. To give you this type of pain. I just was like, I was there, but I wasn't there. I wasn't in my body. I was just floating. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like doing anything but just laying down. Like I just wanted it all to be a dream. Like I wanted it not to be real. But every time I woke up, it was real. I knew I had to get out of there. My initial thought was I had to get out of here. And I don't care if I took anything with me, I just had to go. I called my sister, my twin, who lived in Georgia, and I told her what was going on with my ex-husband and how he wanted to move in the woman that he was seeing with 2 boys, and she absolutely agreed with me with being in disagreement with that. And so she mentioned, without knowing anything that's going on with me in my life, she mentioned, well, why don't I just move to Georgia and bring the girls? And I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm in this video here because in the next video I'll talk about that, and that's actual real time. I know my daughter is going to be upset about this video because she's the one that edits these things, and she's going to be mad about how long this video is. But I had to get it out in one sitting. I'm emotional because, of course, like I said, this just happened, you know. It's been a year since I've seen him. But, you know, I always had to learn that things I said, why is this happening to me? Things happen to you because it's happening for you. This was the catalyst for the change in me. This situation that I have never experienced before. This pain that I have never experienced before and never want to experience again was the catalyst for me becoming who I am right now. I love him, but I do not like the person that he is. The energy that he's moving in. I've always seen him. I see him. I see this person that he can be, this great person, because he's a good person. I'm not gonna, just because a person does all this nasty, ugly things doesn't make them just this horrible, this bad person, because I see the good in him. I see who he wants to be. And I always thought that I can get him there. I loved him. And I can't even say that I don't love him, because I do love him.